I guess we use the word the scandal of unsolved crimes in Thurrock. Was that a fair term to use?
No, I don't think scandal was a fair term to use, because when you look at unsolved crime or effectively detections, what you've got to look at is all of the mechanism behind that. In particular, what's changed from the figures that you got was the fact that the mechanism of recordings changed, the number of reported crimes has changed, so the detection percentage is either increased or decreased. So on the face of it, what appears a very sort of straightforward set of figures, as we've looked into those, and obviously we'll give you explanations for those, but they are completely different in terms of solved crime and crime rate. So I wouldn't say it's a scandal, because in actual fact in Thurrock we're doing very well in terms of recorded crime and actually crime rates themselves.
So when detection rates for drug offences drop 31% over a period of years, how is that a problem with recording mechanisms?
Well, what you look at is, I mean, whereas a drug offence, in terms of you may have had an officer specifically arrest somebody and charge them with possession of a drug, you've got other mechanisms that have come in place now. So you've got drugs cautions, you've got triage, you've got neighbourhood resolution. So as things have evolved, and the situation is now not so necessarily punitive on your first offence, so you may get a caution, you may get a reprimand. So whereas the numbers of recorded offences, the numbers of people that we actually deal with in terms of drugs is probably about the same, what you may find is the disposal is different.
But I guess related to that is the complaint that some members of the public have, as we said before, they can set their watches by drug deals in the borough, so they look at that. You know, do you think that's a fair assessment as well, people saying that?
No, I think if you look at the explosion of recreational drugs right across the country, I mean, you know, you're a media person, you know exponentially the access to drugs is got a lot easier with the internet, with mobile phone technology and what have you. So people are readily able to get access to drugs, whereas before they had to go and find their drug dealers. So we know there's more supply of drugs, that's a known fact. So I don't think it's any worse in Thurrock than anywhere else. What it may be is a little bit more overt in the fact that people in Thurrock, but in terms of people being seen to do it, what we'd say from the community is give us the intelligence on who's dealing drugs and we'll target them.
Do you get good intelligence from the public?
No, unfortunately we don't get as much intelligence as we'd like. You appreciate in terms of a lot of offences, and in order to target specific offenders we need to build an intelligence picture. It's very, very important, because part of that intelligence picture then allows us to do surveillance, it allows us to target individuals, which we're not allowed to do unless we have specific intelligence. So in order to do that, what we do say is, for the community, if you've got intelligence on drug dealers or crime stoppers, any method at all to give us intelligence, because we are intelligence led.
Things like sexual offences, is there an element there where, again, reporting has changed, or you could be seen as victims of success and having different forms of reporting mechanisms?
Yes, quite clearly. I mean, you know, the reporting of sexual offences actually increased, and I don't think the number of actual offences within the community has increased. What we've done is we've become a lot more aware of what is a sexually related crime. We've also increased the reporting procedures, so that when we deal with the crime reported to us, we also ask, has there been any specific crimes in the past? Has there been a pattern? And in doing that, we've uncovered historical crimes that probably wouldn't have come to notice.
Things like fraud and forgeries, I mean, without going into details, I've seen recent cases where just the paperwork on an ongoing investigation for a fraud, it just seems to be immense. Do you have, what manpower do you have to deal with the frauds in Thurrock?
Well, I mean, basically with fraud offences, they're normally long and drawn out. So what we'll do is we'll allocate them to an officer or within CID or what have you, and part of that investigation now falls on the companies themselves. The companies have got to provide the statements, have got to provide the tracking effectively of what the fraud was. So a big company off the internet or something like that, an auction site, would have to provide us with all the information of what the transactions were, where the deliveries were, etc. So a lot of that sort of thing is farmed out. So while there's a lot of investigation, it's very, very time consuming. But the officer would probably run 2 or 3 fraud investigations at once. So our CID officers specialise in those sort of things. We have a fraud department as well within Essex Police, and so the more complex frauds involving companies or banks or what have you, obviously they would be dealt with by headquarters. The lower level frauds are dealt with locally, and yes, they are very time consuming.
Slightly off topic, but a lot of Thurrock councillors believe that a borough-wide booze ban would be effective. But were Thurrock Police or Essex Police against that?
Yes, we are. Basically, if you look at the orders we've got in place at the moment, we've got the banning order in Grays Town Centre, very specific area for a specific problem, and it's been very successful. You know, we can use that. The same problem couldn't be said of a park, for instance, in Alsett or Stamford. So if you have a borough-wide booze ban, effectively banning order, then that applies to a family wanting to drink a couple of beers in the park in the afternoon on a summer's afternoon. You can't say that all of Thurrock is the same, and it's not. So we're quite happy to support any kind of drink banning orders in specific locations, as we have done in Grays, because we can police them and we can actually look at them as being effective. But what we're not happy to support at the moment is a complete banning order across Thurrock, because there's no suggestion that A, it's actually appropriate, and B, we could police it.
How healthy are the numbers of police in Thurrock? I think I saw something on TV the other week where there's one cop going down to Lakeside. He's got 10 young men from South Ockenden, and it just, to a lot of people, it looked quite hairy that one cop would be going to these jobs, and people are concerned there aren't two cops going to these jobs.
No, I think as times evolve, you've got to look at, we use the resources to best advantage. So we have a single crewing policy now. The officers have got personal protective kit, they've got body armour and CS gas and what have you. The incident you were talking about, a very experienced officer did a very good job, because the best tool that we have is actually talking to people. You've got conflict resolution and you've got a benefit of experience. That said, that officer's got a radio. We have other officers in the county that can back them up. So we look at an appropriate assessment of what officers go to. If there is a need to send more than one, then we'll send more than one. And what we've got to remember is we are part of a greater picture in terms of resourcing. We are fluid. As happened over the weekend, we're able to send a number of resources to an incident from all over the county.
We are in the middle of a recession, you know, whatever people's debates. Has that impacted on crime rates at all?
It's impacted on crime, on the style of crime. Basically, acquisitive crime, as one would expect, surprisingly, has not increased in the level that I would expect it to, because quite clearly deprivation, people losing their jobs, tends to mean that they want to gain money quickly in terms of disposable items. Thurrock in actual fact has seen a reduction in crime, a continued reduction in crime. So one would expect actually to see an increase in acquisitive crime, and that has remained fairly stable. So in terms of what would I expect and what are the realities are two very different things. I'd expect to see it rising quite sharply at the moment, but we haven't seen that.
But with £43 million worth of cuts coming to Essex Police, surely that's going to impact in some way on the resources of Thurrock Police, isn't it?
Well, I can't say, you know, any budget cuts will impact in terms of an organisation, but what we have to look at is making what we do smarter. And as we alluded to with police officers, you know, we single crew police officers, whereas in the past we double crewed them. We use technology in a better way. So as things evolve, we have to make better use of what we've got in terms of our estate, in terms of our deployment and things like that. So that's something that's being looked at across the board at our headquarters at the moment. But the intention is to keep the service, the frontline service to the public, shouldn't change. Basically, we're measured against a similar boroughs in terms of our Quanta data, which is national data, and we have our most similar boroughs. So boroughs that are similar in terms of ethnic makeup, in terms of population and geographics, what have you. And of the 17 boroughs that we're measured against, we're actually fourth from the bottom. So, and I say fourth from the bottom in terms of the lowest number of crimes. So there's quite a significant number of boroughs above us in terms of crimes per 1,000 population. So we are actually in the bottom quarter and doing very well.